content presented in this podcast is based on real events and may contain graphic descriptions of violence, sensitive topics, and explicit language that may be triggering, offensive, or sensitive subjects to some viewers and listeners. Discretion is advised. The purpose of this podcast is to explore and discuss true crime cases for entertainment and educational purposes only. This podcast does not intend to glorify or sensationalize crime, but rather aims to analyze and understand the complexities of human behavior in the criminal justice system. We encourage listeners to approach this content with empathy, critical thinking, respect for the victims and their families. In a world where every crime tells a story, some voices remain eerily silent. Their lives ended too soon. Their cases left to gather dust. Their memories pushed into the shadows like they were never here at all. But in The Forgotten Girls, Dr. Alyce Clark refuses to let those voices fade. She steps into the darkness with purpose. Part investigator, part scholar, and entirely devoted to uncovering the chilling realities behind women whose stories were cut short, then buried under time, circumstance, and society's indifference. These aren't just cases. These are lives, dreams interrupted, struggles overlooked, families forever fractured by silence they never asked for. With meticulous research and unflinching sense of empathy, Dr. Clark brings us face to face with emotional truths hiding beneath the cold facts. She exposes the social realities that allow these cases to slip away, and she asks us to confront the heartbreaking question: how many women have been forgotten because no one bothered to remember them? Tonight, she joins us to take us on that journey through the shadows of crime, memory, and resilience, where every chapter uncovers another untold story, and every story reminds us why the forgotten must never stay forgotten. With that being said, it's time to start the show. Let's hit it. Hi, welcome to another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. I am your host, Winnie Schrader. I came across this book, The Forgotten Girls, and it got me thinking, how many cases out there of missing women or women found, cold cases that were never solved, and they're just kind of tossed aside in society as just another, cold case or just another Jane Doe type of thing. And it's shocking when you look at the statistics of how many women go missing or found dead on the side of the road. And you don't really hear much about it after that. And, I'm glad that Dr. Alyce Clark wrote this book, The Forgotten Girls, because it kind of makes us step back and really remember the little crimes that we hear about on a day to day basis, but we just toss it aside, especially now with social media. Everything is just hit and miss, hit and miss. And we don't really take into account the impact that having somebody go missing or murdered in your family, how it affects the entire family, the community. But Dr. Alyce Clark, she's a highly accomplished criminal justice scholar, educator. She's retired from the Norfolk Police Detective with extensive expertise on forensic investigations. So I would love to welcome Alyce to the show. Welcome to the show, Alyce.
Thanks for the introduction. That was really nice.
You're welcome. Well, you are accomplished, and you should get a pat yourself on the back for it, because a job like yours is not easy, but somebody has to do it. You have dealt with crime scenes and dealing with discarded bodies, things like that, and trying to make sense of it all and trying to put a case together. But when it seems like everybody else kind of gives up, after like, it just kinda goes cold and it just kinda sits there. So, the is that the reason why you wrote The Forgotten Girls? What was kind of your mindset, and why did you pick the particular cases that you did to put in the book?
So I was in the military too for 22 years, and I
Mhm,
always remember my soldiers saying, "Out of sight, out of mind," you know, because you wouldn't
mhm,
realize like, where is everybody? Oh, they must be working, but they would be hiding somewhere. So I kind of had that same mindset when I started writing this book because, like, there's several cases out there, but out of sight, out of mind. People aren't really talking about it unless like a what is it? A lead comes in or whatever, like Jody Husentroot case, you know? So,
mhm.
just to keep some of these cases alive is what I think and feel is important, and just some of the cases in the book, uh, are familiar cases that society should know about, like Brandy Hall case, Jody Husentroot, Sigrid
Yeah.
Stevenson was one, and that's actually how I ended up writing this book, visiting New Jersey and, seeing where Sigrid was murdered. But regardless of like how many cases are out there, it's the out of sight, out of mind that concerns me, you know?
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
they say cold case, it really is, it can be a cold case, sitting on a shelf in a file.
Now, when a lead comes in, let's say you have a case, 25 years ago, so and so went missing, body was found, but no evidence, or there's really not much evidence to go off of, and it just sits on a shelf. And 25 years later, a lead comes in. Is that lead taken with a sense of urgency, or is it
I
kind
hope
of
so. I hope so.
okay? Okay.
Because in reality, most detectives aren't gonna work on the case for 25 years because that's a normal
Mhm.
career, 25 years. God bless those that stay longer or work, you know, come retire, then come back, you know, part-time to do some of these cases. But let's say reality, you're gonna have a different detective. So if a lead does come in, and it's all about the motivation of the detective too, and I
Mhm.
think work morale as well. But if you have a good detective, they're gonna take that lead, whether they think it's ridiculous or not, and work it. And what they're gonna
Okay.
need to do is, obviously, if this, case has been put in a box on a shelf somewhere, they need to pull it out, read everything about it, and then that way they can understand whatever lead just came in. Because if you just take a normal lead and just be like, "Oh, I don't know, let's work it," but you have to know the backstory, where that lead comes from, you know?
Mhm. Okay, so the stories that you, compiled in your book, what was one of the stories that kind of, um, I guess, made you frustrated, with the police work, that you, because obviously you went through the police reports
Yeah.
and, the investigative work with these cases. Did you see any incompetency, or just were you frustrated because the lack of investigative work by the officers and detectives on the case?
Yes, I think the Caitlin Rose case really frustrated me a lot because from the get-go, and as my students would say, from the get, um, they they didn't really work it like a normal investigation. And her father is the one that did most of the investigation in my eyes and in my opinion. Um,
Mhm.
but he realized something was wrong real quick, and then he went to Texas, and he feels like nobody was like helping. And the stories in the book in reference to, Caitlin Case's, story, she, went to go get a car and was driving home, and she, like, talked to her father on the phone, and then he hears gravel, like gravel road in the back, and there's no air conditioning in her car, so her windows would have to be down. And then long
Okay.
story short, uh, they ping the phone and eventually find the car, which looked like someone had tried to push it over a cliff on private property. And, like, what gets me is the all her clothes were in the car, her cell phone was in the car, the windows were up, doors were locked, the key was in there, and the gear was in neutral. Excuse me. And, the the car was pushed over, it looked like it was gonna be pushed into the water, but, 2 trees kinda held it, you know?
Oh.
And I don't think that to me, my investigative brain shows a sign of possible sex trafficking.
Okay.
So, because like you're told to get rid of all your clothes, leave it there, put this on,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
you know. So, and then obviously when I started writing that chapter, because I had 3 different parts. I had the first part, which was, homicides, still unsolved. Then I had a second part, which was missing women, presumed dead and murdered. And then the third part, I give like a little forensic ending, case is solved. But when I first originally started doing Caitlin Case's story, it was in the missing persons. So it took me about a year and a half to write this book. And I ended up
Okay.
having to move her from part 2 to part 1. Uh, so because they
Okay.
found her remains, and it just didn't make
Okay.
sense to me how like this her story ended with all the like there were several police involved and like CCTV people didn't go get videos like they should have, and the witnesses in that case that said that they saw her in another SUV and she was crying, police were never called there either. So I mean, nothing was handled correctly in that case, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, and
it's,
it's like yeah, because it's, like, frustrating because 'cause you're like, "If you woulda done this, this, and this, you may have, saved her." It'll you
yeah,
have to do a thorough thing. You look at the tapes, look at anything that you can find at your disposal, you
yes.
know?
And
Especially
it's
in the
like
digital world.
when I was in forensics, someone was talking about checklists, right? Having a checklist. Well, it's important to have a checklist too, but if you have a checklist, you only go by that checklist, eventually, like mentally. But
Mhm.
you can't always have that checklist. You have to kind of look outside the box because there could be subsections in that checklist that isn't on your checklist. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Um,
Right.
and recently, I went back to visit, my parents in Virginia. I currently live in Florida, and I went back to the department, and my homicide sergeant, he was like, "Yeah, we miss you." It's like you knew everything. I said, "I never said I knew everything." He was like, "No, but we knew that you did." I started laughing. I said, "It's just all about critical thinking and how you use your mind." And
Yeah, it's
my
like a puzzle. You gotta start
yeah,
taking each piece. You can't just look at the whole picture and say, "How do I put this together?" You gotta,
yeah.
you know,
So like the way
dissect
my
each thing.
yeah, I agree. And the way my brain kind of worked was, um, like I look at all these pieces and I put theories to them, like what is
Mhm.
theory one, theory two, and I don't know. In my opinion, I think Kaylin Case was being trafficked, and she could have been like injected with something or whatever, or fought,
Mhm.
and then that's how she, ultimately passed. But the medical examiner ruled it undetermined, and there's still
Mhm.
no answers. And just like the O.J. Simpson case, I don't think we're ever really gonna have any answers.
Yeah, I know there's so many cases where with the media spin on cases and, documentaries coming out. I mean, like the Karen Reed case. I mean, that documentary came out before the second trial. So all these things can influence an investigation. And how do detectives and people in your position have to handle that? Because you don't want it to, you know,
Right.
dirty up the pool when you're trying to keep it clean and nice and neat so you can figure it out, and then you got all these outside, sources coming in, kind of, interjecting rumors, theories, things like that, and it starts to
Yep.
become part of the investigation itself. How can you discern through all that stuff?
Two words, facts only.
Oh, okay. That makes
I
sense.
learned I learned that yep, I learned that from, my homicide corporal who's now a sergeant, but she always said facts only, you know?
Mhm.
You can have as many theories as you want, but what do the facts say? What
Yeah.
does evidence say, you know?
Yeah, because now, I mean, it's kinda similar too, like is it Mara Murray case
Mhm.
where they just found her car on the side of the road, the door was open, and she was nowhere to be found. Was that and to me, that could have been a clear case of sex trafficking or
Mhm.
human trafficking. There's a lot of other cases too where they're actually gone back and looked and say, this might be a human trafficking situation. We didn't think of it then. And I don't think a lot of people know how long human trafficking has been going on. People think
I
it's like
know.
just this recent thing.
And
No,
no,
this has been
yeah.
going on since like the 80s
Yeah,
here in the United States.
yeah, I know. I actually had a case like that. It was a missing persons who come to find out she was trafficked. She ran away from, she was 16. She ran away from New York from her parents, went I'm sorry, from Connecticut to New York, and then I guess the guy was, like, pimping her out or whatever, and next thing you know, she tries to get away, and then the guy was like, "Nope," took her and brought her down to Virginia, and this is, like, during COVID times too. So,
Oh.
she I guess, ended up having a boyfriend of some sort, and then he reported her missing because he still lived with his mom, obviously, and, I guess another jurisdiction picked her up, like, in a traffic, infraction or whatever, and
Mhm.
she was able to tell police what happened. So long story short is I got put on this case, as a missing person, and I was like, because I had 2 new detectives with me, and I was like it was crazy because I was like the most senior detective that day because I think it was on a weekend, and, I told the 2 newer detectives, I said, "Hey, go to the children's hospital and do me a favor and see if you, can locate her," and I was like, "This is her information," because they're not gonna give you that stuff over the phone because they don't know who you are, whether you say
Yeah.
you're a cop or not, and, they they were there, she was there, actually doing the COVID test because she had to get cleared because HSI was going to take her and put her in a, like, a special shelter that no one knows about, like, I didn't even know that they had a shelter, but they have a special
Oh,
shelter
wow.
for the trafficking, yeah. So, luckily, timing was perfect then, so I was able to clear
Yeah.
that case within the first few hours, thank God, but, we ended up
Yeah.
doing search warrants and all that kind of stuff, in New York simultaneously, and everyone got caught, and the guy that was in New York was the suspect's son, and he was watching a little baby, which he was a human trafficking baby, and so was the other baby. It was crazy.
Oh
So
my
several people
god.
yeah, several people were arrested all simultaneously in Virginia and New York. It was a big case, big case.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you guys I mean, took that little sect down. I mean, that's a problem though. You take one down, another one pops up.
Yeah,
But
unfortunate.
just keeping that due diligence on just honing in on these groups because that's awful. I mean,
Mhm,
trafficking babies. I
mhm.
mean, I just don't understand. Now, when it comes to the cases, do you deal with the families as well? Are you part of, you know, helping? Are you actually too? Are you open to having the families help you with the
Oh, I
investigation?
would love that. I
Oh, okay.
currently yeah, I work, with one of my good friends who just retired from the police department. He does Pinnacle T is it TCI? They go around training police, departments on certain things, it could be interrogations. I know I do presentations on, uh, crime scene stuff for a few days, crime scene processing, and he goes around and they have an open, I don't know if you know Dennis Bowman, my chapter 13, and
Mhm.
it's my department's case, but John Smith, Detective John Smith, I was in the academy with him, and, we worked together too, also in forensics and in homicide, but he, like, they do cold cases, like, you can hire them to
Okay.
do cold cases, but I would love to be able to help, families because I just have that drive, you know what I mean? And why not
Yeah.
use the expertise when you can? I'm not getting paid
Right.
for it, you know what I mean? So, just
Yeah.
anything to help, because that's all that
Well,
matters. We're all human beings, you know?
right. And I can't imagine what a family has to go through, especially when somebody's missing and you don't know. Just that not knowing are they alive? Are they dead? Are they gonna come home? Are they hurt? Just that not knowing would drive me insane. Insane as a mom. How does it affect you, on a personal level having to deal with, obviously not ideal working environment circumstances, but, how do you get through these cases?
I'm a therapist.
And therapist?
No, yeah. No, like,
Yeah.
I write a lot, so it's really kinda like trauma therapy for me.
Okay.
Like, right now, I'm doing my military book from my time in Iraq, and that has brought a lot of things to the surface that I've went through, and I'm, like, reading my journals, I'm like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I went through this." My mind probably, like, made me forget about it on purpose, and here I am opening up this thing again. Um, but I
Mhm.
think just talking with, like, my fellow police officer friends, talk to them about things, but mental health is really big in this career path, and I think
Yeah.
more and more people just need to be able to talk openly and stop, like, I always say, hiding your feels or being in your
Yeah.
feels, but, like, just open up and talk about it, because that's the only
Yeah.
way, you're gonna overcome any kinda, like, mental health issues that you might have, because you hold that in and not letting it out, it just starts to weigh on you, and then you start
Yeah.
becoming that case or becoming,
Yeah.
it's just you gotta realize who you are and what you wanna do, which is solving that case, but you don't wanna be in the case all the time. You need a mental break.
Right. Yeah, you gotta take those mental breaks, 'cause otherwise you'd go insane. I have to take mental breaks just from my kids. I I have to go to the bathroom. No, I don't really have to go to the bathroom. I just want 5 minutes alone, just so I can decompress. But yeah, I don't know I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would do if I had your line of work, though. I think I'd have to go on a weekly vacation in Cancun. Just kind of, ooh, get all that gunk off of me. No, are there any cases specific, I mean, in the book, but even outside the book, were there ones that really got to you, like, in the feels, and how did you, get through that case? Was there one that specifically stood out to you that, um, just I wouldn't say haunted you, but it really got to you, like, it hit you differently than other ones?
Well, I have a case from my career. It's not in this book, but, I still hold a heavy heart in this one. So,
Mhm,
it was early on in my career. I was working like a overtime type capacity patrol area, and I heard
mhm,
a call go out over the radio saying that, there was a domestic or something, and somebody was bleeding and they needed, an ambulance. And something told me to go to this location. So, I
mhm.
went to this location and nobody there's a lady sitting on her porch in a white nightgown. She was bleeding profusely, like, her white nightgown was all red, and, being in the military, I knew what to do because
Mhm,
nobody knew what was going on, and this is early on before, all that trauma stuff that cops are doing now.
mhm,
So since I was in Iraq, I knew to apply a tourniquet, so I went and applied a tourniquet. I got the husband's belt and used that, and, you know, I ended up getting a life-saving award for that. She ended up with over 200 and something stitches. So what happened was she went to go lock her side door because she was gonna take her son to school and tripped over, a buckle in her rug runner and went right through the
mhm.
glass, and then she pulled her arm right back out. Some people
Oh,
to this day think it was a domestic, but, I don't know. But that's the story she
oh,
told me, and it made sense the way her arm was, because it was like a big V in her upper arm. So she was bleeding, put a tourniquet on, and, a few days later, I went back to see how she was doing, and, her little boy, who was, like, 5 years old or whatever at the time, ran up to me, hugged my leg, and was like, "You're my mommy's guardian angel." And, I just
oh,
had goosebumps all over. So
oh,
now,
so
um,
sweet.
the boy turns 18, and I end up arresting him for burglary. He
Oh,
was
no.
into Yeah, he was into drugs, and then this is during COVID time, and I think this is why I have a heavy heart. They ended up letting him out of jail, earlier than expected because of the whole COVID stuff and people being
Yeah.
in jail. Well, he ended up breaking into another house, and then he broke into the wrong house because it was a Navy lady who was holding her baby, and he broke in and lunged after her, and she shot and killed him.
Oh,
And then yeah, so, to me, I feel like I could have done more because the kid knew who I
mhm,
was. Because when I went to the
yeah.
mom's house, to ask questions in reference to the case, when he got arrested, We immediately were clicking eyes to eyes, and we gave each other a big hug. Like, and this is like many years later, and
Mhm.
and I'll never forget. She called me and left me a voicemail on my phone and was like, "The police murdered my son," and I'm like, you know, but that case
Yeah.
holds. Like, I don't feel guilty, but, like, I feel part of me is still with that kid, you know? It's kinda hard
Yeah.
to explain.
Yeah. I know, and, but it's people like you who have to carry that burden, but that's kind of, what you're made for. That's why you do so well in the job that you do. Um, and, trying to piece these, putting together cases and solving cases, it's a need that you have to fill. I tell you what, I would be a horrible detective because I'm a Virgo and I would never retire because I wouldn't be able to retire unless all my cases were closed. It would drive me insane just eating away at me daily of cases that I can't solve. It would drive me
I'm a Libra,
insane.
so I get it.
Yeah, Virgo and Libra are very similar in that sense. Hey, beautiful souls. Winnie Schrader here from Love and Lotus Tarot, your guide through the energy shifts, emotional waves, and the cosmic chaos we've all been feeling lately. I mean, let's be real for a second. The world feels loud right now, right? There's so much noise, so much tension, so much uncertainty. Between the news, social media, and just trying to keep up with life, it's easy to feel like you're stuck on this never ending roller coaster that just won't slow down. But here's the thing, even though we can't control the outside chaos, we can learn to navigate through it. And that's where I come in. I mean, lately, have you been feeling like everything is happening to you instead of for you? Are you finding it hard to stay grounded when everyone seems just as ungrounded as you are? Or maybe you've been questioning your direction, wondering if the path you are on still aligns with who you are becoming. If any of this hits home, this is for you. It's like we're all trying to move forward, but the universe keeps throwing us stupid curveballs. But here's your reminder, you are not powerless. So all you got to do is reach out and book a reading with me today so I can help you navigate through those troubled waters and gain back control of your life. You can book a reading today. Just visit me at lovelotustarot.com. Again, book a reading with me today at lovelotustarot.com. Now, one case that you did talk about, which is kind of close to home for me, is the Jody Houston Troop case.
Welcome back. Today we're again to our 1-hour morning show. It's a rainy Monday morning, June 26th.
This would become Jody Huisentruit's last morning newscast to ever anchor.
Good evening, everyone. We are no further on the search for Jody today.
Clothing racks used to be filled with a basic blue and black.
What happened to Jody on the morning of June 27th, 1995?
The investigation into the disappearance of newswoman Jody Huisentruit continues today.
No eyewitnesses, no suspect, and still no sign of Jody.
Jody was reportedly on her way to work at KMT News, less than a mile away from where investigators say she was abducted right here in this parking lot.
I would like to confirm that we are officially classifying this as an abduction today.
Outside of Jody's apartment, investigators found evidence of a struggle. Her personal items scattered in the parking lot. Jewelry, shoes, and a bag near her red convertible. And perhaps one of the most important pieces of evidence, a broken key.
As Jody's morning assistant producer, I was the last one to speak with her before she disappeared.
Amy Coons was working that morning Jody disappeared. She tells police Jody was often late for work, and that morning she called Jody and says Jody answered and told her she was on her way in.
We still have our jobs to do, and we just have to get the show on the air.
Coons went on to anchor that morning in Jody's place. It wasn't until hours later that a phone call was made by the station to police that Jody never arrived to work.
If anyone's not familiar with the Jody Huisentruit case, back in, was it 92?
It was a
Oh,
long
how
time
long
ago,
ago
yeah.
Yeah, it was like 92 or something like that. Jody Huisentruit was from Minnesota, and she was a news anchor in Iowa. And that was kind of her career path. She wanted to be a broadcast news anchor. hopefully, to the top she wanted to go. She had to go down. A lot of those news anchors, they have to kind of, uh, you know, work the trenches in the beginning of their career, and they work at these smaller, news stations and stuff. Eventually, she wanted to come back up to the Twin Cities and be one of our news anchors and work her way that way. But one day she went missing. She just, they found her car. It looked like there was some type of a struggle, but that was
Mhm.
the last anyone had heard of Jody Huisentruit. She didn't show up for work, so that's why people were sent over to her apartment because she was the morning news anchor, so she'd have to get up at like an unnatural hour of the morning, like
Yes.
3, 4 o'clock in the morning to go to
Can't do it.
work. Forget that. But yeah, so that case has kept going out throughout the years, and it's like you always hear it here and there, and usually when it's like an anniversary date, but it seems like lately there's been more steam with the Jody Huisentruit case, and they did have a guy kinda nailed down. What's kind of your theory with the whole Jody Huisentruit case in your opinion?
So, news anchors nowadays, they use, like, different types of names or just their first and middle name or a maiden name or something like that, and I
Mhm.
think, she had a stalker, and eventually because we didn't have I mean, cell phones weren't, like, huge, but
No.
they had, I think she had a stalker, and the fact that she, was woken up late because she overslept, and, one of her co-anchors had called her, and she's like, "Yes, I'm on the way." So it was about 5-minute drive. She never made it there, obviously. So think of a female who woke up late, kinda groggy, probably didn't have time to get a coffee or anything like that, or a tea or whatever she drank, and, she's holding this big bag, carrying her, like, work shoes and wearing different shoes, uh, has her blow dryer, and, next thing you know, poof, she's gone, but the bag is
Mhm.
missing. Maybe she, like, swung the bag at the person, and that's why her shoes came out. I don't know because they
Mhm.
found the red high heels, and then the key was, bent on the ground, so you could see because we didn't have the key starts, so
Yeah,
she'd
we
have to
didn't have the
actually
fob
yeah,
yet. So you had to
right,
open the car door
yeah,
with an
with the key.
actual key.
And it was bent, so that to me, I think that's when the person grabbed her is when she had the key in the car door,
Eh
and,
yeah.
because they said the car door was open, and the bag is obviously missing still, but what was it, hair dryer? I don't use a hair dryer, but I always forget the word. Hair dryer, uh, the her red high heels were missing, or not missing, but on the ground, so you could
Yeah.
tell that there was a struggle and, she was obviously taken, and the bag I keep saying the bag, but the bag, I think, plays an important role in this case, because it is missing. Like, did somebody come
Mhm.
across this bag in a dumpster and pick it up and was like you know what I'm saying? Because some people, when they steal things, they throw the items in a dumpster once they get whatever they want. So,
Right.
that's
Right, and
what I yeah.
oh god, I know it sorry, my cat decides to join the podcast, so I'm just gonna have to hold her. This is my cat Pablo, everyone.
Hi.
Hello, say hello. Um, but yeah, because like, with her case, it was like there were so many theories as to what happened to her. Did she just obviously, she just didn't up and leave
No.
because of what they found behind, but it's like, was she trafficked? Was it, like you said, a stalker? Which that's kind of the theory I think that they're really honing in on. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was stalking her. And who knows? He could have been waiting out there every single morning,
Yep,
watching her go to work. And just that one morning, he saw her frazzled or something,
yep.
and he knew maybe that was the moment he could get her. I don't know. And it's scary to think that somebody could have that much dedication to stalk somebody
Once
and
they
to
get that
learn
idea yeah, once they get that idea in their
Oh,
mind, it's straight ahead, and to think about it, like, when she's leaving, getting ready to go, like, all the only thing on her mind is, "I gotta get to work, I gotta get to work, I gotta get to work." She has that tunnel vision, just going straight to her car and not really looking around, to see what's
right.
around her, And that's
Right.
the
Yeah.
problem, and women end up with that, they just I don't think they really think about this sometimes, I had a really good
Mhm.
conversation with my psychologist because she asked me, she's like, "I know I'm your psychologist, but I know your profession." She's like, "The other day, I was walking out the mall, and it was dark
Mhm.
out. When she parked, it was light, and then when she came out of the mall, it was dark, and all the cars were not there, it was just her car." So she's walking to her car, and obviously, it wasn't parked under one of the street lights, and there's this person, like, watching her walk. Don't know if it was a bad person, don't know, if it was just somebody making sure she was okay, but I told her, I said, "In situations like that, you should just be on your phone, call somebody or if you trust somebody enough, share your location, or just say,
Mhm.
'Hey, I'm walking to my car, I'll call you when I get in my car,' or something like that, because we have the
Yeah.
ability to do that now these days with our cell
Yeah.
phones.
My
'Cause I
husband makes me do that.
Yeah, see? No, it's
If
important.
I'm going anywhere by myself, like downtown, he's like, "Okay, when you get out of your car, you call me. I'll be on the phone with you till you get into the place." I'm like,
Exactly.
"Okay." But,
No, that's
he says,
smart. It's
yeah,
very
because if
smart.
something were to happen to me, I could at least, like, start yelling into the phone what's happening to me, give him details, whatever I can, uh, to to help him relay that to the police to help me find me quicker.
Right.
But it's really sad when you look at everything in whole of just how many women have just been discarded.
Yeah,
Um,
I Googled missing
ugh.
persons, and a lot of women come up.
I know, a lot of it's women and, and it's scary now with trafficking and everything. A lot of these teenage girls are still considered just runaways. Well, they may not be a runaway.
Right.
On the surface, that's what it looks like. But these traffickers, they're smart. They know how to get these girls and get them quick and get them in a
Yes.
car and get them gone.
No,
And
oh, yeah.
it's scary, and I've seen ones where cars literally pull up to a curb, open the door, snatch a girl or a child, and pull them in the car, door shut, and they're gone, and it happens in 15 seconds.
They have hand signals. They use hand signals, especially, like, rural areas where,
Yeah.
stores are every, several miles, you know?
Ugh,
And who usually comes to these stores? Most likely tourists, you know?
yeah, it's really scary. Now, have a lot of, cold cases that have been solved, have a lot of them have you found out they came from trafficking situations?
I think some were trafficking, not all of them. A lot of times it's somebody that they might know, or there's just not
Okay.
enough evidence. They might know who it is, but it's still considered cold because no arrests have been found. They have person of interest, but a lot of departments don't want to give that information out because it's an investigation. And my thing is if
Right.
you're like 50, 30 years cold or whatever, give out some of this
Mhm.
information because sometimes when people know that they're being watched, that's when they slip up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or they start to actually have a heart because let's say 30 years have gone by, you know, and now I'm actually starting to get a conscience because now I have a family, I have grandkids, and stuff like that. So you can
Mhm.
use their emotions on them. Some people are just, you know, psychopaths or sociopaths that don't really have emotions, but a
Yeah.
majority of people, they do have emotions because I mean we're all human. You just got to hit that trigger. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Well, and that's very similar to the Delphi case.
Mm.
The public was kind of upset that the police were not giving they were kept, like, throwing little tidbits of information out, but not enough for people to say, "We need more to understand what happened." Um, and when they released the sketch of the first sketch wasn't released until it was the second sketch released, but it was made first. Very confusing, and I understand why the public was getting really irritated because 'cause they're like, "Wait a minute here. The co 2 completely different sketches, a couple years apart, and, they look completely different." I can't imagine how confused they were, but they were trying to keep things close at hand as well. like the audio from that video, they would only put, like a little word, and then everyone's like, "We need the whole video, just
Mm.
give it to us."
Yeah.
Now, I understand why police do hold back certain evidence because only the perpetrator or the killer would know these things, so they want that to come out in an interrogation. But, what so are you kind of the opposite? Are you like, or how do you kind of, separate and kind of organize the evidence so you know what to release and what to hold back?
So, DNA stuff is big, right? So I
Mhm.
keep saying so. Um, like thinking about it, you've had this thing for like 30 years, 50 years. Send stuff off to get DNA, it comes back nothing. Then start releasing some information. What is it? Uh, Elgin Police Department, they
Mhm.
created a podcast, See Something, Say Something, and they're starting now to talk about their cold cases, and they're finding
Oh.
leads, right? So
Oh, wow.
it's 2 detectives that are doing this. So they've done season 1 and season 2, and their chief of police actually, like, had the idea to do it. I mean, doing a podcast is obviously a lot of work, but the end game, is maybe some people make money, but these people make arrests, you know?
Right,
So, just
right. It's
give
getting
out
the
the
information out
yes,
there.
get the information out there. I mean, a cold case is a cold case is a cold case. I'm not saying
Yeah.
like maybe 5 years or 10 years, but if you're talking about 30 years, 50 years, put it out there. And like,
Mhm.
doing this book and doing the research in this book, I started thinking, because we all know about CODIS, right? Well, in
Yep.
the UK, they do DNA when you're born now, which is how they ended up getting the Manchester bomber. They knew who he was because he obviously blew up. But they were able to figure out who he was because they ended up doing DNA, when he was born,
Oh.
right? But us Americans, right, we don't want to do that because we have our rights, and I don't want you to have my DNA, and that's how everybody feels.
Mhm.
Um, so my thing was, what if we had a deceased data bank for, DNA? You know how many cold cases we would probably solve, without having to do genealogy and all that kind of stuff? I think we would save a
Right.
lot of money, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, that sounds and that's thinking outside the box.
Mhm.
You're not just going down that normal checklist, because they have found killers and serial
Yeah,
killers through ancestry.com based on DNA results through other family members.
and
Um,
I was gonna say the case that really got me thinking about this was the Debbie Lynn Randall case in the book. Because
okay.
once I finished it, I was like, this is crazy because the guy that abducted her and killed her ended up killing himself 2 years after, but this is like a 30-year-old case. So if we had a
Mhm.
deceased DNA data bank, we would have known within 2 years.
Right. Exactly. And that would have been like, okay, then that could have been shelved 2 years after instead of
Mhm.
sitting on the shelf for 30 years and just keep getting handed down to
Yeah,
detective,
and think of all
just
the money
sitting
that
there.
goes into that. All the money
Right.
that goes into the investigations, Like, as a cop,
Yeah.
some cops was like 30 bucks an hour or whatever, I don't know. But a lot of times it's overtime, and,
Mhm.
you work in these
And they do
cases.
have
Yeah.
yeah, and there is a place, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I will put a link for it in a banner up right now. But, it is a database where you can just basically donate your DNA to have it there. So in case if there is a missing person found, dead or deceased, that there is some type of database. So it's kind of like what you're saying, but it's the living side of the people putting their DNA in a data bank where if their relative is found dead somewhere, then they're not just a Jane Doe. Their DNA ties to this mom or this father,
Mhm.
and they've been missing their daughter for 5 years. You know what I mean? So it's kinda like Ancestry, but it's specific for that. So I'll put a link for that in today's description notes too, because, you never know. You could have a 3rd cousin, but this woman is laying here as a Jane Doe, and she's in an unmarked grave for 40 years because she has no ties to DNA anywhere, and they've taken her DNA, whatever, and it's been stored away. At least it gives it some type of closure or tangible something, so she's not just sitting there just a body unclaimed.
Right.
There, because every person has a story. Now,
Well,
um, oh, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, like, just like missing kids right now, because you
Hmm.
always get that "Have you seen me?" magazine or whatever, milk jug, because they still do that. Uh,
Yeah.
but, like, let's say they become an adult and they know that that wasn't their parents, or they maybe have an inkling that wasn't their parents. What if they wanted to go get tested? I mean, they can obviously use ancestry DNA, but what if they also are going through problems or mental issues because of what they endured and they end up ODing, you know?
Hmm.
So, once again, a
Exactly.
deceased DNA data bank would be great in that type of situation.
Yeah, just so at least that way you can tie this person to a or body to a name, to a family, to a home, something, so they're just not there, just sitting there and, and their case is sitting on a shelf collecting dust and nothing's being done about it. It would be very beneficial and save a lot of taxpayers' dollars on not having to reopen anything all the time or take time to go through these they're supposedly a lead, but obviously it's a dead lead
Mhm.
because so and so who did this 30 years ago is already dead anyway, died, 15 years ago. Well, you could have closed the case 15 years ago then.
Yeah.
It totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. So, now in your book, you kind of mentioned that you do have faith.
Right.
And does that faith kind of help you get through this as well on top of, having that, gallows humor with your fellow
Yeah.
officers, because that is very important. I use laughter a lot, and I'm like
Dark
the type
humor.
of person who'll say a joke at a funeral,
Yeah.
just to ease the tension a bit, but, uh,
Oh,
y
yeah.
now faith plays a huge part in how you do your work, is that correct?
Yes. So I was in Iraq in 2003, and we were mortared all the time. We were in a Bugarad prison. So
Mhm,
my whole spiritual faith kinda, like, grew a little bit stronger. Well, I say a little bit, a lot stronger. So I have this,
mhm,
like, I guess, familiarity with what it could be like to die, because I literally was repenting my sins because I thought that was it for me.
mhm,
So in some of these investigations that I did, whether, in forensics or homicide, and I came across a deceased individual, I always said a little prayer. Um, Praying for the family, praying to help me find what I need to find, which is weird because in forensics, I was like finding all this evidence that people probably wouldn't have ever thought of. And I think
mhm.
prayer was part of that. So in the
Oh, for
book,
sure.
at in the book, after end at the end of each chapter, I put a little Bible verse in there, to kinda, like, lead the way of, like, how I would have done an investigation, uh, because I
Mhm.
think prayer was an important part of my spirituality and the crossing, for this person.
Right. And, with, I also have a good friend of mine who is also a police officer, and he's a medium.
Oh, wow.
And a lot of times when he has to enter into, uh, a crime scene with the deceased body, he does the same exact thing. Because like you said, they are human, whether their circumstances of how they died, whether it was drugs, just, not living the greatest life, they're still humans, and they still you still have to show some empathy and compassion for these people because obviously they're in a situation that is not ideal, and obviously it wasn't ideal on how they got that to that position either. And it's people like you and I think part of that faith that you have and that diligence that you have drives you to do such a wonderful, wonderful job in your career choice of being uh just an awesome detective and forensic investigator. I mean, it's like you're looking at everything in whole and trying to piece it together. And I believe that, like you said, that prayer, it's like giving you a jolt of strength to
Mhm.
get it done. And I applaud you for that. Now, do you have a website or anything that people can get in
I
touch with you? Or
I have one that should be up and running soon, but it's gonna be, Alyce Clark PhD.com or something
okay,
like that.
and also there will be a link to buy the book. Make sure you rate and review people, because it helps these books get seen more. Like when people search up true crime, if it's a popular book, people are going to start seeing it. And I really want to showcase these type of books to have people take a step back and say, maybe we need to start slowing our lives down and start taking a look at these things and what can we do to help and thinking outside the box. If you're in that mindset of, true crime and things like that. I love the book. I can't wait to get
Good.
my hands on and start reading. And I have to read so many books, but this is one that I really want to, because I might even go through and delve into some of the cases that you have in your book, because I do want to do a episode on Jody Who's in Truth, because that one is just kind of one of those cases that just sits there and you want to solve it, but there's just nothing to go off of what they have, and it's almost like they have to kind of uh, come up with a theory to kind of close the thing, and hopefully something would come about it, but Jody's body has never been found. I don't know if she will ever be found, but I presume that she is gone.
Yeah.
There's I can't imagine her wanting to if she was trafficked. I mean, she's got to be what, in her 50s now?
Yeah,
She'd have
or
to be in her 50s or
what
60s.
I
Uh,
think something happened, in the van or whatever when she was taken, and
mhm,
I think there might have been a struggle, and within the first few hours, she was probably, dead or whatever, and the person was like, "Oh, no," and what do you
mm.
do, you know?
Yeah,
And
well, there's dump her in a cornfield, I'm sure, 'cause there are plenty of that in Iowa, and that's kind of a common place for body dumps down there is in cornfields. But thank you so much, Alyce, for coming on today and talking about the Forgotten Girls. Again, there will be a link for that in today's description. And I want to thank you for your service as being a former military, a veteran. But are you still currently serving, or are you retired?
I retired from the military in 2020, and I retired from the police department on Veterans Day 2021.
Oh, okay, so you're, like, retired, but now you're just kinda doing this kind of,
I teach now, yeah.
yeah, teach and kind of, yeah, have your own kind of, like, little
I
thing
have
that you have
time.
going with
I have time now.
time. So you have time to think outside the box now
Yes.
all the time, and you're coming up with great ideas, like having a deceased data bank and things like that, and I'll definitely have to check out that podcast with detectives talking about cold cases, because that might be a new way to get this information out to help
See
solve
something,
these
say
cases.
something.
Right, and I tell that to people all the time. If you see something funky, say something, because
Yes.
it's better to be safe than sorry. Trust me. So, but thank you so much for coming on, and thank you all, and I hope to see you all next week. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. And until our next case, my armchair detectives, stay safe, stay vigilant, and stay aware. I'll see you right here next week on Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot.